The first thing he notices is the smell of rain, even though the afternoon sky over the harbour is an indifferent blue. Elias stands at the railing with his coffee cooling between his fingers, watching the tide gnaw gently at the barnacled pylons, watching a gull drag a ribbon of seaweed like a frayed scarf. He tells himself he's only there because the ferry's late, because the hardware shop at the end of the pier won't open until 3, because anywhere is better than the apartment he hasn't learned how to live in yet. But the truth softens and blurs around the edges, and he knows, without wanting to admit it, that he's listening for something he can't name. The wind folds itself into his collar and smells like wet stone and lavender. Lavender doesn't grow near salt, he thinks, and then hears footsteps, the kind that hesitate as if the pier were a question. She arrives as a shape before she finds her outline, a figure stitched in light and shadow. The breeze lifts the hem of her moss-green coat, and in that small flare he sees the pale scar along her ankle, a curved comma of a story he does not know yet. She moves like someone practicing how to belong, zeroing in on a spot 3 planks away from him, laying her palm on the railing as if asking the wood for permission. A camera dangles from her neck, old and blunt and heavy, the sort that holds memories like coins in a tin box. She does not look at him. She looks at the horizon as if it had said her name. He means to step aside, give her the view, but his body is loyal to curiosity. She raises the camera, then lowers it without pressing the shutter. The lighthouse blinks, on, off, on, its pulse like a slow heartbeat. Somewhere behind them, a door in the bait shop slams and laughter spools out. Elias waits for the familiar embarrassment that comes with paying attention to strangers. Instead, with the odd precision of a bell tolling across water, a sense of recognition slides into him, quiet and inevitable. He has never seen her. He is sure of that. And yet the moment arranges itself with the exactness of a scene he has dreamed. The salt, the gull, the green coat, the camera that does not take the picture. She speaks first. "Do you ever get the feeling you're standing in the wrong season?" Her voice has the hushed warmth of a place where books are kept. It makes him think of libraries and coat rooms, of soft lighting and index cards with precise handwriting. He has not used his voice much today. When he answers, it feels like uncapping a fountain pen that's been carried too long. "All the time," he says, "though I couldn't tell you which one is right." She tilts her head without turning it. "You hear the rain too," she says, as if they've agreed upon a secret. The brewer from the cafe clatters cups in a tub behind the window. The ferry horn yawns in the distance. The sky remains an unreadable blue. Elias thinks of the dried bouquet on his kitchenette table, sharp with dust and sweetness, of how the stems look like a tangle of small bones. He has been carrying weather inside him for months, and here it is, recognized out loud, like a friend arriving late. "I'm Mara," she says, finally facing him. When she smiles, it's like watching a door open onto a room full of light. The smile changes nothing and everything. It doesn't beautify her so much as clarify her, the way the sun lifts detail out of fog. Elias hears himself say his name, hears how it sounds when a new person tries it on. For a time they say nothing. The silence is not empty. It feels carved, deliberate, a bowl that could hold something if either of them were brave enough to pour. A trio of children thunder down the planks, talk bright as gulls. Elias watches the smallest boy leap the cracks between boards with a concentration that seems religious. Mara adjusts the strap of her camera and touches the scar on her ankle with her other foot, an absent rub, like a habit. He files that gesture away without meaning to. The human body is an archive, he thinks. It keeps all the versions we've been. "Do you live here?" she asks. "I'm learning to," he answers, which is as true as anything else. He arrived 6 weeks ago with 2 suitcases, a lemon tree in a plastic pot, and the boxed remnants of a life he does not discuss. He rented an apartment with more windows than he had things to put near them. He set alarms for meals the first week, as if hunger were something that needed a reminder. He laughed once, out loud, at a joke on the radio and frightened himself. He has made friends with the night pharmacist who speaks softly and always gives him the receipt, even when he says he doesn't need it. These are the kinds of facts he could offer, and yet he does not. He is both the kind of person who doesn't speak and the kind who wants to. She nods. "I'm visiting," she says. The word visiting contains both arrival and departure. It refuses to choose. "I came for the lighthouse. And the rumor." He waits. She takes pity. "They say if you stand on the pier long enough, the water will tell you what you've forgotten." She smiles as if to apologize for believing anything. "Or maybe it just gives you back what you lost." "What did you lose?" The question is too quick, naked. He wishes he could take it back and polish it into something gentler. But Mara does not flinch. She gazes beyond him to where the ropes bunch like sleeping snakes, and after a long breath says, "Time," as if it were a person. They let the gulls talk over it. The wind has a new edge. Someone somewhere is burning leaves, and the smoke arrives in thin, generous lines. Elias studies the side of her face, the way the skin near her temple bruises slightly violet when the sun slides behind a cloud. He understands that she has not told him anything, and also that she has told him too much. This is, perhaps, the only way strangers can speak truth. "My grandmother used to say the sea is a patient teacher," Elias offers, surprising himself. "It tells the same lesson until you learn it." He thinks of another person saying those words to him long ago, of hands cutting bread, of a kitchen window blinking with rain. He imagines the past as a jar of honey that has crystallized, all the gold still inside, only stuck. Mara lifts her camera again. "Do you ever wish you could take a picture of a sound?" she asks, half to herself. The shutter clicks this time, neat and satisfied. "Or of whatever it is, right before a thought finds words." He laughs, low. "I think that's what poets try to do." "I tried once," she says, and there is a place in her tone where the wood splinters. Elias hears it and thinks, without wanting to, of hospitals with neutral art on the walls, of the way the air smells like lemon and endings. He wonders who taught him to hear this way. He wonders what he owes that person, and if it is possible to repay the debt. The ferry appears around the point, a white comma dragging a wake that shivers the harbour into commas of its own. People gather their bags. A man kisses a woman's forehead exactly twice. A dog gives itself permission to be enthusiastic. Mara does not move. "I'm not getting on," she says, as if he had asked. "Good," he answers, and both of them look startled by the word. The pier boards creak under a shared weight. It occurs to Elias that certain sentences rearrange the furniture inside a day. You say them, and suddenly there is a chair where there wasn't one, and you have to learn how to walk around it. He wants to ask her about the camera, about the grandmother or the lack of one, about the scar and the season and the rain they both hear. He wants to tell her about the lemon tree that will not fruit, The way he leaves the radio on at night to keep the darkness company. The way he does not step on cracks if he can help it, as if the old superstition could save him from a new grief. Instead, he says, "There's a cafe 2 streets up with terrible chairs and the best peach tarts. If you wanted," and then stops, because wanting is the most tender verb he knows. She looks at him. In her gaze, he recognizes that elegant, bewildering sensation of déjà vu, the kind that doesn't say, "We've been here before," but "We were supposed to meet here." The water slaps softly at the posts. The ferry's ramp screeches into place. Somewhere a phone rings and is ignored. Mara nods, almost imperceptibly. "I could be convinced," she says, and the words are a bridge. They walk side by side, polite enough to leave that thin ribbon of air between their sleeves, impolite enough to keep it taut. The town is a musician tuning. Shutters clatter, a bus exhales, a bicycle bell bleeds a bright note into the afternoon. The cafe's bell is a tiny thing, with a voice so sweet it almost breaks his heart. Inside, the room smells like sugar and flour and something else. Anise? And the floor creaks in a way that suggests long conversations. The chairs are indeed terrible, bowed as if they've been listening too hard. They sit anyway, elbows not quite claiming the same table. The waitress, a woman freckled like a constellation, takes their order and calls them both darling, which makes Elias feel briefly like a person in a song. Mara slips the camera out of her way and rubs the scar again with the side of her shoe. He cannot not see it now. The human eye is greedy once it learns a ritual. "It's not a glamorous story," she says, catching his glance. Her tone is careful, not defensive. He shakes his head. "I wasn't buying a ticket." "Good," she says, smiling into her water glass. The tart arrives, its crust burnished and proud, peaches arranged in a sunburst that looks both deliberate and accidental. They share it with the polite choreography of strangers and the hunger of people who forgot to eat lunch. He watches a crumb cling to her lower lip and then lose its resolve. He does not realize he is holding his breath until he lets it go and the room sharpens. Outside, a cloud finally makes good on its grey promise. The first drops tick against the window like shy knuckles. Mara turns to watch them, and in her profile, Elias sees both the person she is and the one she is not yet finished becoming. The rain finds its voice, a steady curtain, and the cafe becomes a sanctuary they have both been accidentally brave enough to enter. He thinks again of the rumor she carried to the pier like an offering. The water gives you back what you lost. He wonders, as the world softens outside the glass, whether the sky does too. He does not say any of this. He only says, "I'm glad you didn't get on the ferry," and listens as the rain agrees. The rain insists, and the cafe answers by settling deeper into itself, as if the walls could lean closer and make a cocoon of the small room. Elias discovers that the sound, the steady shiver of it on the glass, the soft applause on the awning, slows his thoughts to a rhythm his heart can match. He watches a drop trace itself into a long tear and then lose its name in the streaming pain. The world beyond blurs into watercolor, brick the color of old cherries, umbrellas like ink stains, a boy tugging a red cart that becomes only a red suggestion. He has been lost in his life in a way that made edges too sharp, sounds too loud, time too long. Now, strangely, the blur is a kindness. He is aware of the weight of the chair under him, of the heat of the tea cupped in his palms, of the presence of the woman across from him like a candle that does not flicker. Third-person pronouns apply themselves dutifully to both of them in his mind. He, she, as if this were a story he is reading and not the one happening to his body. He catalogues sensations because he does not trust his choices yet. Cataloguing is a form of prayer that doesn't ask for anything. Mara eats with careful pleasure, the kind of attention that seems to honor every layer of the tart, the crumb, the slick of fruit, the slight bitter at the edge where the sugar has browned. She breaks the crust with the side of her fork and then looks at him as if worried she's being too loud. He shakes his head, and it feels, oddly, like granting permission. He understands that people can starve in ways that have nothing to do with food. This understanding sits between them, tender and unspoken. "What do you build?" she asks after a while. Not "what do you do?" or "what's your job?" but "what do you build?" like a question with scaffolding and weather. It makes him want to answer honestly, makes him feel seen in a way that is both soothing and dangerous. "Shelves," he says first, because this is the safe truth. "Tables, cabinets that never quite line up." He waits, then adds, almost shyly, "Rooms, or the feeling that a room can like you back." She smiles, and the light discovers new instructions on her face. "I've never heard it put that way, but yes." She looks at the terrible chair, as if grateful to it for trying. "I move a lot. The first thing I do in a new place is ask the light where it wants to land." He pictures it. Mara in an empty room, hands at her sides, listening to windows. A soft, peaceful ache opens in him at the thought of a person who asks permission of light. "And what do you build?" he says, and then realizes the verb is not wrong for her either. "Proof," she answers, not dramatically, but like someone naming an ingredient. Proof that something beautiful happened, or that someone existed the way they said they did. She taps the camera lightly, as if to wake it without scaring it. "Sometimes I get it right. Mostly I get close enough to try again." The waitress, Freckles Constellation, arrives with 2 napkins and a small glass of cream, neither of them requested. "For the tea," she says, as if she'd been eavesdropping on their yearning and wanted to give it a place to pour. Mara thanks her by name, which Elias notices on the pin. Lynn. That simple act of calling another person by their name catches at him. He has been speaking into rooms without names for months. He tastes the tea again. With cream, it behaves differently on his tongue. It becomes round, almost buttery. It feels like an argument for softness. "You said the rumor brought you to the pier," he says. "Is that the kind of proof you photograph? The water telling the truth?" Her eyes crease. Sometimes the rumor is just an excuse to stand still long enough. She looks at the rain, the window, the town reduced to blur and pulse. "I thought I'd hear something. I didn't expect you to answer first." He doesn't know what to do with that, so his body does the old trick of occupying its hands. He straightens the spoon. He aligns the sugar packets. He considers the odd geometry of how people arrive in each other's lives, angles of chance, the long calculus of grief and timing. "My grandmother taught me to listen to floors," he says, surprising them both. "The creaks are like letters in a language. It's how you know when a house is telling you it's tired or lonely." "And what do you do for a lonely house?" she asks, leaning forward in a way that makes the air between them feel populated. "You put weight in the right places," he says. "Books help, plants, Rugs are a kind of hug if you choose the right one. He hesitates, then adds, people help if they walk softly. She looks at his hands. He can feel her gaze the way one feels sunlight through a shirt, the particular warmth of being noticed. You've had to learn to walk softly, she says. It is not a question. He thinks of rooms he left too quickly, of a hallway where he learned the shape of his own echo, of keys that changed their minds about locks. He thinks of the voice on a phone that said, I prefer precise language, and meant I no longer want the life we built. He thinks of how quiet he made himself afterward so nothing would break. I'm learning, he says instead. It is both less and more than the truth. A woman at the counter laughs like breaking glass. A dog shakes itself in the doorway and makes constellations on the tile. Lynn places a glass jar of lavender sugar on the table that smells like patience. New, she says. On the house. Mara dips a finger. The sugar shines on her skin. She tastes it as if remembering something. Lavender by the harbour, he says, because he has to name the loop or he'll get lost in it. I thought I was imagining that. It follows me around, she answers lightly, and then her voice changes colour. It was a thing in the last place. The person I... She stops, redirects. It just follows. Scents can be ghosts you decide to keep. He nods slowly, and the part of him that flinches from other people's stories stays still. He does not ask for more. He gives her the dignity of timing. The strange, gentle fact of this afternoon is that both of them are threading needles without snapping them. The door opens, and a gust delivers the outside, damp and insistent. With it, a man in a neon rain jacket stumbles slightly, brushing Mara's chair. The camera jolts. It knocks against the table and skids toward the edge. Her hand shoots out and catches it with a reflex that seems older than thought. The strap bites into her wrist. In the long half-second of that small, ordinary danger, Elias learns what matters to her by the way her body chooses to save it. Sorry, the man says, sheepish, and buys apology with a wet grin. Lynn tells him it's fine in the voice she reserves for mild calamities. Mara exhales, thumb stroking the dented top plate as if soothing a frightened animal. What is it? Elias asks, meaning the camera, meaning her attachment to it. He hears the carefulness in his tone like a soft border. She turns it so the brand doesn't show, as if it were a person who disliked being introduced with credentials. It used to be my mother's, she says. She thought photographs could hold time like a jar holds lightning. A smile ghosts across her mouth. She wasn't a scientist. She could be right anyway, he says, earnestness startling him. About the holding. Not the lightning, maybe, but the time. Her eyes lift, unexpected shine. He has the urge to look away out of respect, the way one does when a stranger prays. But she doesn't hide it. She does the opposite. She lets him see her looking back from wherever she went just then. He recognizes the return like the end of a small, important storm. You build rooms that like you, she says softly. I build jars that try not to leak. Elias wants to put that sentence somewhere safe. He looks at the rain. He hears his grandmother again, the teachings she carried in her apron pockets like clothespins. You can make a room less lonely with a rug and a kettle and the truth. He wonders what else he has the courage to carry today. Come see the shop, he says before he can weigh it. It's not far. There's a window that pretends it's a porthole, and a radio that only plays songs from the year no one wants to talk about. The owner's at the dentist until 3. He lets me babysit the screws. Do screws behave? Her mouth does the small curve around her question that he is already learning to wait for. They can be bribed with little draws. He feels foolish, and then oddly proud of being silly. Silliness has been away too long, a cat that stayed out all night and has finally forgiven the house. They leave money under the sugar jar, the good kind of quiet falling between them as they stand. Outside, the rain lowers its voice from insistence to murmur, a soothing hymn played on 100 thin strings. They step into it, share the awning's brief protection, then commit to the weather. He offers his umbrella without the theatre of gallantry. He simply holds it at a height that makes space for both their heads, a moving tent. Their shoulders almost learn each other and then mind their manners. The street smells like wet wool and lemon peel. He takes her the long way on purpose, down alleys that have the word alley in their bones, the brick so close together the day narrows and breath slows. Laundry lines are blown sideways, shirts reaching to touch other shirts. A cat in a window watches the rain with wounded dignity. Someone has chalked a hopscotch grid that the water is tenderly erasing. "Do you think weather is a conversation or a mood?" Mara asks, stepping over a puddle that politely reflects the sky. "Yes," he says, and she laughs, and he feels the answer land where it should. The hardware shop is the kind of narrow that forces strangers to learn choreography. Bells stitched along the door sing when he opens it, the note a pleasant, homemade gold. The air inside is a taxonomy: oil, pine, metal, cardboard. The radio in the corner tries to find a station and then bravely invents one. The counter is an arrangement of old-fashioned virtues: ledger, pencil, jar of peppermint sticks. Elias knows where the light switches are and how to coax the back fixture into waking. He turns it on and the aisles bloom. He shows her the wall of screws in their small, miraculous drawers, each labelled in handwriting that leans. She reaches out as one might touch a library, 2 fingers, reverent. "Do you ever feel calm just looking at categories?" she asks. He considers the drawers, their tidy promises. "Sometimes I think naming things keeps them from leaving," he says, "or from becoming something else while you're not looking." "That's the danger and the comfort," she says. "You can miss the way a thing wants to widen." He leads her to the window in the back that peers onto the alley and a slice of the harbour beyond. It does pretend to be a porthole, round and stubborn, the glass old enough to waver the world. They stand easy close, but not quite leaning. The rain threads the distance. The lighthouse blinks its faithful pulse. On, off, on. The rumour she carried feels less like folklore now, and more like instruction. Wait, and the water gives. Elias finds, to his astonishment, that he is not listening for answers anymore. He is listening for company. Mara raises the camera. He watches her posture shift into the kind of listening that happens through lenses. It is gentle, practiced, a soothing calibration. She does not just look. She attends. He becomes aware, suddenly, deeply, of the way he is standing, the way his hands hang, the way the room holds them both like a bowl built for this exact weight. She does not point the camera at him. She points it at the reflection of them in the soft, stubborn glass. The shutter whispers, a domestic sound. He feels the picture enter the world like a candle lit in a room no one knew was dark. "You caught us," he says, hushed without meaning to be. "I caught the room liking us," she answers, "and the rain not minding." He doesn't know what to do with the largeness of the feeling that rises then. It is not grand, it is not loud, it is merely correct, like two puzzle pieces remembering they were cut by the same blade. He rests his palm on the counter and finds a groove worn by the hands of whoever stood there longest. The past says hello in fingerprints. He says hello back in silence. If he were a braver man, he might tell her the truth that keeps tapping politely at the edge of his throat, that the smell of rain arrived before her as if she were its name, that he came to this town to practice losing less, that the lemon tree at home has one small, stubborn bud he has not told anyone about because he is learning not to say wishes out loud. He is not that brave yet. But perhaps bravery is not one leap, but many tiny permissions. 3 o'clock, the radio declares, triumphant, and the dentist somewhere returns someone's smile to them. Elias expects the shop owner's key at the door. He feels the impending end of this small, perfect weather, and does not want to tighten against it. He looks at Mara and sees the wet petal of hair at her temple, the soft shine the rain has left on her. "Can we—" He starts, and chooses a smaller verb. "Would you like to keep walking when it slows? There's a bookshop that pretends not to be a bookshop." She does not make him repeat it. She does not make it a test. "Yes," she says, as if the word were a bridge that's been waiting for their feet. The bells at the door practice their song in a brief, ghostly sway. The rain, in its quieting, sounds like approval. The rain gentles to a drizzle, a soft percussion that seems to follow them as they step out of the shop and into the thinning grey. The street is rinsed, cobblestones shining like scales, and the town exhales after being held in the storm's embrace. Elias lifts the umbrella again, though less necessary now. The gesture is more about the space it holds for them both than about weather. Mara walks close, her coat brushing his arm at intervals, each contact a tiny spark she doesn't notice and he cannot ignore. They take the long way again. It is his habit already, detours as quiet offerings. They pass narrow stoops where flower pots lean like tired listeners, storefronts closed until evening, the quiet, tender sigh of a cat curling into a wicker basket under a porch. Mara pauses at a puddle, crouching to frame it in her lens. Elias watches as her camera clicks, catching the reflection of a broken sign, a shard of sky, the ripple of her own face bending into a stranger. "Proof," she murmurs again, half to herself. He finds himself wanting to ask proof for whom, but stops. Some questions are prayers in disguise, and prayers deserve silence. The bookshop is what he promised, a front that declares antiques, though its windows hide more paper than porcelain. Inside, the air smells of old bindings and candle wax, a soft library hush stitched with the occasional creak of the floorboards. Lamps glow like patient moons. A woman behind the counter barely looks up, as if she's seen 1,000 arrivals and each one belongs. Mara's eyes light, as though the room has said her name out loud. Elias follows her between shelves, so tall they bow slightly at the waist. She runs her hand along spines, murmuring titles, pausing at one without pulling it free. He watches her the way he once watched weather shift on the horizon, slow and inevitable, both soothing and dangerous. "My mother used to mark pages with lavender sprigs," she says suddenly, fingertips on a cloth-bound volume. "The books all smelled like her." Some still do. She doesn't look at him, but the truth in her voice is raw, a note struck on unpolished string. Elias swallows gently. He knows better than to answer with platitudes. Instead, he picks a volume from a lower shelf, a book on carpentry, brittle at the edges. "My grandmother wrote inside cookbooks," he says. "Notes in the margins, adjustments. The way she made a recipe belonged to her. After she passed, I tried to cook from them. I kept tasting her handwriting instead." Mara turns, her expression a soft ache. The silence between them feels deliberate again, carved. It's not emptiness, but a place where something is invited to grow. She touches the scar on her ankle, not out of pain, but memory, and then takes a step closer. "Isn't it strange," she says, "how loss teaches us the vocabulary of presence?" The lamps hum faintly. A man clears his throat 2 aisles away. Elias feels the air shift, gentle, soothing, peaceful, tender, and understands that whatever this is, it is beginning in earnest now. She sets the camera on a stack of books, as though trusting the room to hold it safe. He notices the gesture as a kind of surrender. They spend the next hour in slow orbit, drifting between shelves, sharing stories in fragments. She tells him of photographs taken but never developed, of places left too quickly, of the silence in rented rooms. He tells her of unfinished tables, of nights where sleep was an absence rather than a gift, of the lemon tree on his sill, stubbornly carrying a single bud. They do not rush. They do not press. Healing is not a storm, but a tide, gentle, returning, pulling back only to come again. When they finally step out, the world is washed clean. The sky has broken into blue again, shy but sincere. Elias feels lighter, though he cannot name exactly what has been set down. Mara slips her hand briefly into the crook of his arm, casual as if she's done it 1,000 times before, and he lets her. He feels the contact as a truth both soft and steady, a reminder that presence can be enough, that beginnings can be as tender as rain easing into silence. The town hums around them, ordinary, unaware that something extraordinary has been stitched quietly between 2 people who were strangers only hours ago. Elias breathes, slow and deliberate, and finds that for the first time in a long time, the air answers back. Evening folds itself over the harbour, not in haste, but with a kind of tender authority, the way a quilt is drawn over a resting body. Lamps flicker awake, one by one, their halos trembling on wet streets. Elias and Mara walk without urgency, carried along by the quiet certainty that the day has conspired for them. They pause near the edge of the quay, where fishermen coil their ropes like prayers, waiting to be spoken. The tide is climbing back, soft and insistent, and the lighthouse keeps its patient rhythm, on, off, on, like the heartbeat of something larger than either of them. Elias feels the pull of words in his chest, truths he has kept hidden for months, perhaps years, truths that ask now to be unburied in the presence of this stranger who isn't. "My father used to say silence is the only safe inheritance," he begins, his voice low, almost unwilling. "I believed him for too long. I kept everything folded inside, until I couldn't tell which parts were me and which parts were just the weight I was carrying." He stops, startled by his own honesty. The air holds it, unjudging. Mara listens with her whole body, eyes steady, hands lax at her sides, breath even. When she speaks, it is not to rescue, but to share. After my mother died, people filled the house with noise. Neighbors, relatives, even friends of friends. I thought if I stayed very still, if I was quiet enough, I might hear her again in the spaces between voices. But noise only multiplies itself. It took me years to learn that grief prefers soft company, not distraction. The truth of it hangs there, gentle, soothing, peaceful. Elias feels the ache in his chest ease, as if someone has loosened a too tight band. He wants to thank her, but the word would be too small. Instead, he watches the reflection of the lighthouse tremble on the water, and realizes healing sometimes wears the face of recognition. They keep walking, past the bakery that smells faintly of sugar and ash, past the alley where children chalk galaxies that the rain will later erase, past a dog that curls on a stoop, sighing as if it has carried the day for everyone. The town seems to fold itself around them, an unseen hand urging them not to hurry. At a small park, they sit on a bench still damp from the storm. Mara rests her camera beside her like a friend. She tilts her head back, watching the sky deepen into velvet. "I used to be afraid of dusk," she confesses softly. "It felt like a theft. But lately, I think of it as a promise, that even endings can be beautiful." Elias studies her profile, the way her expression softens into thought. He understands in that moment that they are not trading confessions for curiosity, but laying down pieces of themselves like lanterns to light a path forward. The air between them feels alive, tender, and for the first time in months, perhaps years, Elias allows himself to believe that healing is possible, not as an idea, but as something living, breathing, sitting right here on a rain-soaked bench beside him. He does not reach for her hand, not yet. But the space between them is no longer empty. It is a bridge, waiting, patient. And beneath the hush of the evening, both of them know they will cross it. Night has a way of making everything honest. The harbour, restless and dark, breathes against the stone as though it knows the weight of secrets. Lamps paint long, trembling paths across the water. Elias and Mara walk slowly, neither willing to break the spell of unspoken nearness. Their words have grown softer, sparse, as if silence itself has begun to speak for them. At the crest of the hill, they stop. The whole town stretches below, windows flickering like constellations scattered across earth. Mara lifts her camera but doesn't press the shutter. Instead, she lowers it and says, "Some moments don't need proof." Elias watches her eyes shine with that fragile mix of ache and wonder, and something inside him settles, the way a stone finds its place in the riverbed. "I think I came here to disappear," he admits, voice ragged but steady. "But today, I don't feel invisible." His confession hangs in the cool air, vulnerable as new leaves. Mara turns to him, not with pity, but with recognition that is deeper, gentler. "I came here to remember," she says, "and maybe forget, too. I thought I was only carrying ghosts, but maybe I was meant to meet someone who understands the language they speak." Her words are tender, healing in their simplicity, as if she has handed him a key he didn't know he needed. The hush between them swells, peaceful and alive. Elias feels it, the inevitability of the moment, like rain returning to sea. He reaches for her hand, slow enough to allow retreat. But she doesn't pull away. Her fingers, cool and soft, weave into his, a gesture that feels less like beginning and more like recognition of something that has always waited. Below, a ferry horn drifts across the night, mournful yet full of promise. The lighthouse blinks its steady vow, on, off, on. And in that rhythm, Elias understands that love is not thunder or lightning, but tide, gentle, patient, soothing, always returning. Mara leans her head against his shoulder. No vows are spoken, no grand declarations needed. The healing lies in the quiet, in the shared breath, in the steady pulse of something both fragile and unbreakable. They watch the harbour together, two people stitched by accident and grace into a single story. The night folds closer, and with it a sense of wholeness neither expected. Their silence says it all. And as the lighthouse sweeps its faithful light across the dark, Elias lets out a breath that feels like homecoming. If you felt the warmth in this story, let it linger with you. Then like, comment, and subscribe to keep this light alive.